Coming up, the Timberwolves beat down on the Jazz and the Hawks come back to beat the Lakers in the fourth. This is Locked On Now NBA.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
What's up, everybody? You are listening to Locked On Now NBA, local experts with the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Daniella Bruce, and thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Our Locked On NBA hosts are here to help break down everything from Sunday in basketball. Trae Young and the Hawks handed the Lakers another loss in our biggest game.
The biggest game.
The Atlanta Hawks trailed by 10 points going into the fourth quarter against the Lakers in Atlanta, but Trae Young and the Hawks came up big late to send LA off as losers. Locked On Hawks chimes in after a 38-point fourth sealed the deal for Atlanta.
Hello friends, my name is Brad Rowland, and Atlanta Hawks have now won 7 consecutive games, almost climbing back to 500 after a slow start this season as they knock off Los Angeles Lakers on this Sunday afternoon by a final score of 129-121. It was a brilliant close to this contest for Atlanta. They were down by 10 at the end of the third quarter and then closed 38-20 in the fourth to come from behind and get this victory. Okongwu was fantastic off the bench in this game, 16 points, a bunch of dunks, I believe 5 dunks in the fourth quarter for Onyeka in his second season. Trae Young was big and big moments for Atlanta, as he often is. John Collins had a huge game, particularly in the first half, and lots of defense in the fourth quarter. Now, it was always, not always perfect, I should say, defensively in this game, but the fourth quarter, they got a lot of stops, held the Lakers down to 7 of 22 from the floor in that fourth period, and a lot of positives to take away from this one. No rest, though, for the Hawks as they turn around and face the Toronto Raptors at home on Monday in a back-to-back. A test there for sure, but the Hawks are now riding high with 7 games in a row in the win column. We'll get into that and plenty more on the Locked On Hawks podcast.
The Lakers had to try and win with LeBron James out, and LA couldn't finish with the king off the court. Our Locked On Lakers host recaps after LA's third straight loss.
Zane Kamenetsky, co-host of Locked On Lakers podcast, and the Lakers lose 129-121 to the Hawks in Atlanta, falling 3 games below 500. 33 points for Malik Monk, 27 for Anthony Davis, and it was a back-and-forth game. A couple points the Lakers had a double-digit lead in this game, but as it went along, Atlanta took more control of the game, particularly in the fourth quarter, where you could really feel the absence of LeBron James, who was not there, dealing with swelling in his knee. The Lakers scored just 20 points in the fourth quarter, had a very difficult time generating high-quality looks, and in the meantime, 62 points in the paint for Atlanta. The Lakers were often left without a backline of defense when Anthony Davis was ever drawn out high for screen and roll action, and again, another point where LeBron's absence and that lacking size, you could really feel it during this game. A lot more to get into, so make sure that you're subscribing to the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel and that you are making Locked On Lakers your first listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The Minnesota Timberwolves showed up big for the hometown fans last night, especially Karl Anthony Towns. The star big man got himself a triple-double on the way to a blowout win, and Locked On Timberwolves recaps everything post-game.
Ben Beacon with Locked On Wolves here. The Timberwolves beat the Utah Jazz by 20 on Sunday night behind Karl Anthony Towns, just his second, believe it or not, second career triple-double, 31 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists. Cat had 16 consecutive points at one point for the Wolves in the third quarter, 18 total in the third. And also, Jaden McDaniels, a season-high 22 points on a perfect 9 of 9 shooting, made all 3 of his three-point attempts on the night. Torian Prince was great off the bench, 10.7 rebounds, came alive in the fourth quarter. And the Wolves actually played really well defensively against a shorthanded Utah Jazz team. Of course, no Donovan Mitchell, no Rudy Gobert. Joe Ingles was injured early in the game. Hopefully he's all right. It didn't look good. Hopefully he's okay. But a very shorthanded Jazz team. The Timberwolves were able to pull away in the second half, scored 40 points in the third quarter. And when the Jazz started to double team Karl Anthony Towns in the mid post, he was just acting like a quarterback in the pocket, picking off, finding open receivers, picking apart the Jazz defense. And he did that to the tune of 10 assists on this night. This was a fantastic all-around game for Minnesota, getting back on track after a couple of road losses last week. And now the Timberwolves are back to 500 at 25-25. We're going to break it all down on the post-game podcast. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wolves.
This loss for the Jazz has made it 11 of the last 13 in which Utah has come up short. Once considered one of the best teams in the West, our Locked On Jazz host tries to figure out what has slowed down in Utah.
The Utah Jazz lost their 11th game of their last 13, but the loss pales in comparison to the injury to Joe Ingles. David Locke of Locked On Jazz. The Utah Jazz lost by 20 to the Timberwolves in a game that they trailed by just 4 at the half. But late in the second quarter, Jazz veteran Joe Ingles drove his left leg, planted, buckled, non-contact injury, went down, and was taken off the floor with no pressure being put on that leg. Last year, Ingles averaged 12 points a game, shot 45% from three, and was very deserving of a potential sixth man of the year award that his buddy Jordan Clarkson won. You may recall Joe actually gave Jordan the award. He was a key cog to the Utah Jazz since joining the team in 2014-15 after being cut by the Los Angeles Clippers, and has been a constant with Rudy Gobert for the Jazz successful run of the last few years. No official word on the injury, but he will have an MRI tomorrow, as the Jazz may have lost one of the key pieces that makes them a unique team. Jazz fall for the 11th time in 13 games. More on Locked On Jazz.
The Cleveland Cavaliers led going into the fourth quarter on the road, but like the Lakers, ended up blowing it late as the Pistons outscored Cleveland by 14 down the stretch. Our Locked On Cavs host says that this one adds up to the worst loss of the season to date for the Cavs.
Hey everyone, Evan Damrell here, co-host of Locked On Cavs, and the Locked On Now takeaway after the Cleveland Cavaliers' Sunday night loss to the Detroit Pistons. Maybe it's just Cleveland sports playing on Sunday that always results in heartbreak, but I think it is reassuring to say that 50 games into the season, this is the worst loss of the season for the Cavs. After opening up the game hot and holding Cade Cunningham largely to an ineffective presence on the floor for about 80 to 90% of the game, Cleveland blew this one down the stretch, and they will be licking their wounds heading home tomorrow against the New Orleans Pelicans. Interested to see how J.B. Bickerstaff and his squad responds, because they seem to respond well whenever they seem down, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. I don't know. It's just weird times. This is a weird loss. The Cavs should have won this one, and hear about this and more on tomorrow's Locked On Cavs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
The Orlando Magic overcame a triple-double from Luka Doncic and beat the Mavericks in the final minute thanks to another big night from rookie Franz Wagner. Our Locked On Magic host tells you how Orlando pulled off a big win after that game.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, and the Orlando Magic have just completed a winning homestand, a 3-2 homestand. Really feels like the Orlando Magic have turned maybe a corner of some sort. Look, we're not under any pretense this year. The Orlando Magic are 11-40. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're not about to make a playoff run, but this season was always about growth and development. It was always about seeing the team continue to get better. And yes, while there are plenty of people who understand what the lottery standings are and understand all that stuff, this young group needed to get better and show signs of improvement. If there's any disappointment about the way the Magic have played to this point of the season, it's that, yes, there are these little signs of improvement, little signs of getting better, but they never were able to tie it all together. What they did Sunday night against the Dallas Mavericks, a very good Dallas Mavericks team, yes, without Kristaps Porzingis, but a very good Dallas Mavericks team playing very, very well. The Magic tied it all together. Not only that, they withstood rallies, they withstood runs, they made big shots down the stretch, they got big stops, they stopped a superstar. Luka Doncic still had a great game, but went quiet late in the game. The Magic got the ball out of his hands, and they picked up a great 110-108 win. This is another just great building block for a young team, another proof of concept that what they do can work, that what they do can beat good teams, and yes, that they can continue to get better. Maybe the Magic have indeed turned a corner. We'll have a lot more to say about this on Locked On Magic. Until then, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich.
And that's all for today's Locked On Now NBA. Thank you to our Locked On NBA host for keeping us up to date on everything that happened in basketball yesterday. And thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Now that you're done here, head over to Locked On NBA or your local team's Locked On podcast. I'm Daniella Bruce, and this has been Locked On Now.